Good morning. Hello to everyone who got the memo that apparently I cannot get my age verified on the other account. Ridiculous. I'm gonna have to do the credit card thing because they won't do it with my ID for some reason. I don't really understand. Maybe, I don't know. Not yet, Mina, not yet. I tried with my driver's license yesterday. Hasn't worked yet. They have one other option where they can put like a small charge on your credit card to confirm that you have like a credit card. So I'll do that later today. It's just not worth dealing with right now because it'll take 24 hours anyway. So I'll do that later today, and then we'll see what the heck happens. You know what I mean? Whoa, that's very full. Very full. Let's empty this reservoir. It's too full. Too full. Morning, everybody. How's everyone else doing this morning? Anyone else doing anything interesting? There we go, okay. You finally got some sleep last night? That's excellent. Excellent. How can I confirm it? Yeah, please, Avery. I would love to know the same sort of thing. Yeah, Becca, I know you are. I've been sleeping like 3 hours now for the past week and a half. Ooh, that does sound wonderful. Hey, Tana, I saw that you just joined. I also saw that you got a message that you think you got a wrong slime in your order. I double triple checked your order, so let me know via email or DM what you think was wrong in your order, and I will get it fixed for you. But I'm pretty sure everything was on the up and up. You do still have another order outstanding, so if you're thinking that something's missing, it's in the outstanding order, but I'm pretty sure everything in the first order was correct. I don't know. Don't put anything on my credit card without letting me know. Yeah, Becca, don't worry, I won't do that. It's too early to be filtering. Sometimes they filter the stupidest stuff, you know? Like, I think that they shouldn't be allowed to filter, like, I don't know, people that are your mods. Like, if I made her a mod, I want her to talk to me. By the way, the bank said it's up to Venmo. Of course they did. Of course they did. I mean, like, freaking duh. Like, freaking duh. We know that. Guys, Becca, did you tell everyone that it happened again? I think a lot of people know the first time. You guys know that Venmo sent me Becca's credit card, right? In the mail. Venmo sent me Becca's credit card. No, it gets worse, Amanda. And we double checked everything, and she had the correct address on everything. And then they did it again. They sent me another one. And I texted Becca and I said, you are never going to believe what happened. And she said, don't say Venmo. And I just said, well, I won't say it then, but yeah, it's true. I mean, like, good thing it's me. What if they sent it to a stranger and they just, like, racked up a bill on your card? They fought me saying it wasn't possible gas. Like, yeah, but, like, you have the email where it confirms your address is correct. And let me reiterate once again, the address that they are sending it to here in this apartment is not my billing address on Venmo. Because Venmo makes it so hard to change your billing address that my brother's apartment in New York that he lived in while I was in Italy is still my billing address on Venmo, because you have to call and wait on hold for an hour to change your billing address. So, like, I made my billing address his thing when I went to go live in Italy because I didn't have a house. So, like, how did they get this address? That's called data mining. They had to get it somehow. Right? Like, where'd they get it? It's not my Venmo address. Oh, no, so we were just talking about the stuff that happened with Becca. Venmo sending me 2 of Becca's cards. It's insane. It's insane. Like, if she had entered my address incorrectly, I would have been like, oh, haha, very funny, change it here, let me mail it to you. But she didn't. And then we were like, okay, haha, they made a mistake one time, but they didn't. Yeah, then they tried to tell her that it was a fake card. How could it be a fake card with the same numbers that are listed in their message? Yeah, seriously, when does Liz get to call? And I want to listen in. You can change my billing address while you're in there. It's wild. It's all wild, if you ask me. Good morning, Anya. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with. Liz, should we do it together? Yeah, you have to do it together. Yes. But I just want to listen. Yeah, it's big cluster. Look at this adorable coffee that I made him. Wowie, wowie. What a lucky guy. Your coffee mix looks so good. You put in milk and what? I put in milk and half and cream. Drives me nuts. Some places won't let you change things online. Like, why though? Venmo's whole thing is that it's just like payments for things digitally, but you cannot change your billing address online. Like, it didn't work. No, it hasn't worked on the other account yet. I'm working on it. I'm going to try the credit card thing today. That's how we got on this conversation. I said I'm going to try the credit card authorization through TikTok today. And Becca said, just don't use my card. And I said, well, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's kind of funny. Why do I even have Becca's card? I don't anymore. I gave it to her. I gave it back to her when she was here. When she was visiting me, but like, it's still funny. It's like, what is happening? What is happening? Freaking wild, you guys. I handed it to you since Venmo can't. That's exactly right. I physically handed it to you since Venmo can't be trusted. That's right. Exactly right. It's kind of funny because you guys trust each other, but oh, exactly. That's exactly what I've been saying. Like, what if it went to someone else? Like, that could be, like, they need to be stopped from to do this twice. Like, that's dangerous. It's okay only because it was me. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Liz, I have a car next week since Deborah's going to be Jamaica. Look at all our new babies in their new pots. Oh my gosh. We live in a garden of glory. Look at this baby. He's so majestic. Look at that top one. It's growing so big. It's literally a ginormous plant. It was in the smallest little thing before. Now it's in like a floor pot. Like, look how big that pot is. It's wild. These leaves are huge. It's a huge leaf. Really pretty. Liz, Becca will end you. She will literally end it. I made lunch already so I can enjoy book club. Yay! I'm going to try. So what I want to do, if possible, is I want to finish this book by Tuesday next week so that we can start the next book when I get back from getting married. So yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, right, seriously. You would have to move out of the country. Oh my gosh, it's been so nice knowing you, Liz. I hope you enjoy witness protection. It's been really fun though. I had a great time being your friend, and I think the book recommendations were A+. Everything else, I guess you could like secretly mail me book recommendations, but no more text messages. You're in witness protection now. I know. Well, I mean, listen, you did this to yourself. You can cry all you want, but when you've brought the mistake on yourself, what do you want me to tell you? What if I get your mail? Uh-oh. Now he's in big trouble. Yeah, that could happen. This isn't going anywhere. How dare you all? I mean, it depends on you. She's going into witness protection if she comes out here without Becca. That's facts. I told Becca she should just come with her wife. And then problem solved. That's true. You didn't come to California yet. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. We are on chapter 16. Can I have a mod? I don't know. That would depend on a whole bunch of features in TikTok. Can I be a mod? I would talk to your friends who have live access and ask them if you could be their mod. Yeah, that's probably a really great idea. Yeah, go talk to your friends about that. Okay. Yes, you can go together. Chapter 16 is called Promises, and this is the drawing, you guys. Do you think that's Madame Weatherberry because she wears fascinators? You think that's her? Here we go. Bristol tossed and turned all night with nightmares of Madame Weatherberry battling the Snow Queen. She dreamed the fairy was repeatedly knocked to the ground by a ferocious monster in a fur coat and a snow crown. Thank you, Becca. Madame Weatherberry reached for Bristol and begged for help, but there was nothing Bristol could do because she was frozen inside of a large ice cube. Even as she woke up in a cold sweat, the images of her dream were so lifelike that Bristol was convinced it was actually happening. And for all she knew, it was. Between the nightmares of Madame Weatherberry in peril and the dreams of the witch hunters chasing her through the in-between, Bristol was starting to think that she would feel more rested if she just stayed awake. She stepped out of bed and decided to walk through the castle to clear her head. As Bristol walked down the third floor corridor, she could hear a couple of her classmates snoring in their bedrooms. She passed Xanthos' door and remembered his painful confession from the Circle of Secrets. Bristol's heart filled with sympathy for the boy. She decided to check on him and quietly pulled open his heavy steel door. When she peeked in the room, Xanthos was sound asleep on his metal bed, wrapped in his foil sheets. He had set his muter metal on his iron nightstand, and while Xanthos slept, the flames on his body increased and decreased as he inhaled and exhaled. Bristol felt strange watching him sleep, but it was so nice to see that Xanthos was resting so peacefully. With his secret finally off his chest, she figured he was sleeping better than he had since arriving at the academy. Hey, Grace, we barely just started. We're only like 2 paragraphs in. Before leaving, Bristol waved her wand and a collection of aluminum dolls appeared in the corner of Xanthos' room, so he'd have a fun surprise to wake up to in the morning. Aww. The castle was dark and quiet as Bristol moved through it, but she found the solitude comforting. She stepped outside and stood on the castle's front steps and was happy to see that the rain had finally stopped. The night sky was starting to lighten as dawn approached, and the griffins were already awake, hunting for breakfast. Watching the majestic creatures flying through the air reminded Bristol of how lucky she was to live in such a wonderful place. She had been at the academy for less than a month, but already Bristol couldn't imagine living anywhere else in the world, and she hoped she'd never have to. As she gazed around the property, admiring all the colorful trees and flowers, Bristol spotted something shiny moving toward her in the distance. Madame Weatherberry's golden carriage had returned to the academy. And Bristol was so thankful to see it that she jumped up and down with excitement. Eventually, the carriage pulled up to the castle's front steps and she ran to greet her teacher. "Madame Weatherberry," she cried, "I'm so glad you're back. I was worried you..." The carriage door swung open and Bristol stopped in her tracks, hardly recognizing the woman inside. Madame Weatherberry had aged another decade. She wore a thick violet coat that covered her whole body from the neck down, and there was a large black bruise on the left side of her face. She looked at Bristol in the castle in a daze. She looked at Bristol and the castle in a daze. She was confused about where she was. Madame Weatherberry tried to climb down from the carriage, but she was so weak that she could barely stand, and the fairy collapsed on the ground. "Madame Weatherberry!" Bristol screamed. Madame Weatherberry spent the whole next day resting in her office. The only person she allowed inside was Mrs. V, and that was just to deliver bandages and rubbing alcohol. Bristol paced outside the doors and waited for the housekeeper to emerge with an update, and when Mrs. V finally stepped out, the concern in her eyes told Bristol everything she needed to know. "How is she?" Bristol asked. "Better, but not by much," Mrs. V said. I cleaned the wound on her face, but it was the only injury she'd even let me look at. A few of her bones might be broken, but she wouldn't even let me get near them." "She can't heal herself with magic?" Bristol asked. "Usually," Mrs. V said.
unless the injuries were caused by magic. Did she tell you what happened? Bristol asked. She said she slipped and fell while she was visiting her friend, Mrs. V said. A fall? Bristol said. She said a fall caused this. Mrs. V sighed. I don't want to go starting rumors, but if I'm honest with you, I'm starting to get a little suspicious. With all the strange letters, the unexpected trips, the witches, and now this, I think something's going on with that Madam Weatherbury that she isn't telling us. Clearly the housekeeper thought her suspicion was a brand new discovery. Well, I'm glad you found me this morning, Mrs. V said. Lord knows Madam Weatherbury would rather have crawled into the castle than call for help. She wants to save the world, but heaven forbid someone care for her. What did you tell your classmates? Well, I just told them that Madam Weatherbury returned early this morning and she wasn't feeling well, Bristol said. I tried to be as vague as possible so that they wouldn't worry. Morning.
Good morning.
Well, I hope it works, Mrs. V said. Madam Weatherbury said she'd like to speak with you now. Maybe you'll have better luck finding out the truth than I did, but I have to warn you, she's not in her normal spirits. The housekeeper headed down the floating staircase to put the unused bandages away. Bristol knocked on Madam Weatherbury's door and peered inside the office. Madam Weatherbury, Bristol asked, Mrs. V said that you wanted to see me? The fairy was seated behind her glass desk and looked so exhausted that Bristol thought she might fall asleep any moment. She'd popped the collar of her violet coat to conceal the bruise on her face. The veil on her fascinator was lowered to cover her weary, bloodshot eyes. Besides being tired and injured, Madam Weatherbury was completely drained of her cheerful disposition. She stared at the floor with a melancholy longing. Close the door behind you, she said. Bristol followed her instructions and then sat at Madam Weatherbury's desk. How are you feeling? Bristol asked. I heard that you had a bad fall while you were visiting your... You can stop pretending, Bristol, Madam Weatherbury said sharply. I know that you're aware of much more than you're letting on. Bristol's initial instinct was to act like she didn't know what the fairy was talking about, but as Madam Weatherbury looked deep into her eyes, Bristol realized performance was useless. How do you know? She asked. Sometimes magic has a mind of its own, Madam Weatherbury said. On your first day at the academy, I suspect the castle put you in the bedroom directly above my office for a reason. It wasn't until I was leaving with the witches and you hugged me goodbye that I realized why. The castle put you in that room because it wanted you to spy on me. It knew we would be having this conversation long before I did. Madam Weatherbury, I don't understand, Bristol said. What conversation are we having? Well, before we get into that, I want to make sure that we're on the same page, the fairy said. I'm sure you've developed a few theories to explain my questionable behavior. So tell me what you think is going on and I'll fill in the blanks. Bristol was thrilled for an opportunity to finally learn the truth, but she was worried that Madam Weatherbury wasn't in the right state of mind to be handing out information. Are you sure that you want to do this right now? She asked. I don't want you to regret it later. I insist, Madam Weatherbury said. Okay, all right then, she said. From the information I've gathered so far, I know that you've been leaving the academy not to visit a sick friend. You've been traveling to the Northern Kingdom to help solve something called the Northern Conflict. And what do you suspect the Northern Conflict is? Madam Weatherbury asked. Bristol hesitated to respond. Oh, as ridiculous as it sounds, I believe the Northern Conflict is just a code name for a woman known as the Snow Queen. Go on, the fairy said. Well, the Snow Queen is a very powerful witch who's been attacking the Northern Kingdom, Bristol continued. She's covered the kingdom in icy blizzards and caused massive amounts of destruction. No matter what the Northern Kingdom's army does, they haven't been able to defeat her yet. So before you had the idea to start out the academy, you started defeating the Snow Queen as an opportunity to gain worldwide acceptance for the magical community. You thought if someone like you saved the world, then the world would finally have a reason to respect people like us. So you teamed up with the witches and you created a plan to stop her, but it's been more difficult than you predicted. Bristol felt silly after hearing herself say it all out loud. She half expected Madam Weatherbury to laugh at the outlandish theory, but the fairy never flinched. You're only wrong about one thing, Madam Weatherbury said. Which part? Bristol asked. The Snow Queen is the sick friend I've been visiting, she said. I haven't been lying about that. After a very tragic loss, my dear friend Queenie became infected with hate, and hate is the most powerful disease on the planet. For years, I watched the illness consume her and change her into a monster, and regrettably, I did nothing to help her. By the time she was wreaking havoc on the Northern Kingdom, it was too late to reason with her. Queenie has been blinded by vengeance, and now violence is the only language she speaks.
But how can you be friends with a witch in the first place? Bristol asked. Wasn't she full of evil and darkness to begin with?
It's possible to love a person beyond their demons, Bristol, Madam Weatherbury said. After all, there was a chance at one point that Lucy was a witch, and that didn't stop you from following her into the in-between. You chose to love Lucy for who she was, instead of what she was. And I made the same choice with Queenie. But unlike you, I failed Queenie as a friend. The angrier and more hateful she became, the more distance I put between us. I abandoned her when she needed me the most, and now I am partially to blame for what she's become.
Then she's still alive, isn't she? Bristol asked. If you had already defeated her, you'd be referring to her in the past tense?
My friend has been dead for years, she said. But unfortunately, the Snow Queen is very much alive and stronger than ever.
Bristol glanced up at the enlarged map of magic above the fireplace. Well, if she's so strong, then why doesn't she appear on the map? She asked.
I'm afraid you won't find the Snow Queen on the map of any magic, Madam Weatherbury said. She's made herself untraceable so that she can attack without warning. I've managed to stop her destruction from spreading beyond the Northern Kingdom, but each encounter is more taxing than the last.
You aren't going to face her again, are you? Bristol asked. Madam Weatherbury closed her eyes and nodded in despair.
I'm afraid I have no choice, she said. No one else can face the Snow Queen. Right now, I'm the only thing standing in the way of her attempts at global obliteration.
But Madam Weatherbury, you can't, Bristol objected. Fighting her in your condition would be, I can't say this word on TikTok, self-ending. Madam Weatherbury raised a hand to silence Bristol as her eyes beamed with grave urgency.
Now we must have the conversation I was referring to earlier, Madam Weatherbury said. Please don't share this with the others, but there's a very strong possibility that I won't survive defeating the Snow Queen. I remain optimistic, but one must never let positivity outweigh practicality. It's only a matter of time before I am called back to the Northern Kingdom, and if I should perish, I want you to take over the academy.
Me? Bristol said in shock. Wait, what about Mrs. V or Tangerino or Skylene?
Mrs. V and the girls aren't as strong as you are, Bristol, said the fairy. From the moment I placed the magic wand in your hand, I watched your star on the map grow. I knew you were the only person who could replace me. So please, if I don't see another year, promise me you'll continue my work. Promise me you'll help your classmates reach their full potential. And promise me you'll use your magic to help and heal people and change the world's perspective of the magical community.
Tears ran down Bristol's face as she imagined a world without Madam Weatherbury. She couldn't believe the responsibility her teacher was asking her to accept, but Bristol knew in her heart there was nothing she wouldn't do for this fairy. No one could ever replace you, Madam Weatherbury, she said. I could never even repay you for the life that you've given me, but I do promise to continue your legacy in your absence, whether that day comes soon or decades from now. A faint grin grew on the fairy's face, but it faded quickly. Bristol could tell there was something else that Madam Weatherbury needed to discuss with her, and it was a topic the fairy dreaded with all her might.
And now I'm afraid I have an even greater request to ask of you, Madam Weatherbury said. It brings me great pain to place such a heavy burden on your shoulders, but there's no way around it. Bristol was confused. She couldn't imagine a bigger task than the one she had already been asked. What is it? She asked. Madame Weatherbury took a deep breath before making the difficult request. In the event that I perish without defeating the Snow Queen, she said with difficulty, then you must kill her, Bristol. Bristol felt like she'd been kicked in the stomach. Her heart began racing and her palms became sweaty, and the office started spinning around her. Madame Weatherbury, I cannot kill the Snow Queen, she exclaimed. I've never hurt anyone before. I can't even defend myself against the witch hunters. I panicked under that pressure. That wasn't your fault. It was mine. We're going to do a smoothie dance real quick.
Smoothie dance?
It's smoothie dance. This is a prequel, though, and we've read the future already. Like, okay, look, I love a prequel. I'm super in on it. You know what I mean? Hunger Games, snakes and Songbird and snakes, that whole thing. Like, we love a prequel. But, like, Chris is doing this knowing we all already know what happens to the Snow Queen. You know what I mean? So, like, that's interesting, right? We all already know. Yeah, no, for real. But like, yeah, one more. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, we read the whole other series already. And he knows that because he wrote that first. No, go ahead. Go ahead. So, like, what's this guy doing here? You know what I mean? Like, he knows he wrote the whole other series first. We read that first. And now we're reading this, which he wrote next. You know, it's just confusing. It's just confusing. So what's going to happen? Something really big must be coming. But what? I don't know. Madame Weatherbury, I can't kill the Snow Queen, she exclaimed. I've never even heard anyone before. I couldn't even defend myself against the witch hunters. I panicked under that pressure. That wasn't your fault. It was mine, Madame Weatherbury said. I've made a grave mistake as your teacher. My lessons have been preparing you and your classmates for the world I wanted you to live in, but I have not prepared you for the world that actually exists. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to begin instructing you and the others how to use magic to defend yourselves. You may not be ready to face the Snow Queen today, but one day you will be. I don't know, Becca. They always do some weird thing. Thank you. Wowie, wowie. So exciting. Becca, I think our Gen Z friends are different than the average Gen Z. Like, Brittany and Grace are not like their peers. That's all I'm going to say about our lovely Brittany and Grace. I'm going to guess they don't know any more than we do about this trend. Just going to guess. They're emotionally just as old as we are. Oh, you mean like a rando Gen Z that's popped in here? Oh, yes. Hello, random Gen Z person that we don't know. Do you know what this trend is? That's funny. That's funny. I love that she was like, no, not our... Wait, Naisa, are you really? I had no idea. Are you a part of that group too? I had no idea. Well, I'm glad I know. I can consider you triplets then. That's funny. You guys will be the triplets. I hope not, Amanda. I haven't seen it yet either. But Madame Weatherbury, I'm only 14 years old, Bristol reminded her. I'm a child. You cannot ask me to do this. Bristol, you may be young, but you've never had the luxury of being a child, Madame Weatherbury said. You've been a fighter since the day you were born. You looked beyond the limits of the world that the world placed on you, and you strove for a better life. And now you must look beyond the limits you're placing on yourself and strive for a better world. If neither of us can successfully defeat the Snow Queen, then everything, the world, the Academy, and life as we know it, will be destroyed. That's funny, Brittany. Madame Weatherberry was putting Bristol in an impossible position. She had never killed anything before, but now she was being asked to kill the most powerful witch in the world. Bristol wanted to refuse her request with every fiber of her being, but Madame Weatherberry gazed at her with such desperation in her eyes that Bristol didn't have the heart to disappoint the fairy. She looked to the floor reluctantly and nodded in agreement. Okay, Bristol said, I hope and pray it never comes to that, but if you can't end the Snow Queen, I will. You're on the cusp. Okay, that's fair. That you felt like that. Oh yeah. My goddaughter's an alpha technically, and she's gonna go into high school next year. Yeah.
Thank you, Bristol, the fairy said. You have no idea how comforting it is to hear you say that. Now, if you please excuse me, I should rest. We both need the strength for the days ahead.
The next morning, Madame Weatherberry met her students and apprentices on the castle's front lawn to begin their first lesson in magical self-defense. Yeah, it does, Avery. Next year is beta. Yeah. Me too, Jen. The fairy hadn't joined them for breakfast, and when she finally appeared, the children were shocked to see that their teacher was in such a fragile state. Besides the bruise on her face, Madame Weatherberry walked with a glass cane, and she needed Mrs. B's assistance to climb down the castle's front steps. She was completely drained of her usual charm and energy and had to conduct the lesson while sitting on a glass stool.
Please forgive my delicate appearance, Madame Weatherberry told her concerned pupils. I'm recovering from a nasty fall that I had while visiting my friends.
Did you fall off a cliff? Lucy asked.
It looks worse than it feels, Madame Weatherberry said and swiftly changed the subject. Now, for today's lesson, we'll be using our magic for a purpose that we haven't explored as of yet. It doesn't matter how much joy and comfort that we spread. Because of all the challenging times that we live in, it's very likely that we'll cross paths with people and creatures who wish to harm us. And when the situation is justified, we can use our magic to protect ourselves from others in danger. Your assignment this morning is to use your magic to defend yourself from the forces trying to hurt you. Xanthos, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's like Gen Z ending, Jack, because my goddaughter is 2010 also. I don't know why everything with Madame Weatherberry is made of glass. That's a great question, but like literally everything. From her cane to her chairs to like everything. Her desk. Like a glass desk makes sense, but everything? Is it trying to say something about transparency? Or like, what is he saying here? I don't know. Xanthos gulped nervously. Yeah, what kind of forces would I be defending myself from though? He asked. Instead of responding, Madame Weatherberry tapped her cane on the ground 6 times, and 6 scarecrows appeared in the field nearby. The fairy tapped her cane again, and the first scarecrow came to life and detached itself from the wooden post. As soon as its feet touched the ground, the scarecrow charged towards Xanthos with arms flailing in all directions. The boy screamed, and the scarecrow chased him in circles around the property. No, I'm not ready for this, Xanthos yelled. I think someone else should go first.
These situations can be alarming, but it's important to remain calm and clear-headed, Madame Weatherberry said. Take a deep breath and imagine the quickest way to disarm your attacker.
Despite the fairy's recommendations, Xanthos couldn't summon tranquility to save his life. The scarecrow eventually caught up to the boy and wrestled him to the ground. His classmates desperately wanted to help him, but Madame Weatherbury wouldn't let them intervene. Xanthos removed his Mutter metal, and thanks to his anxiety, his body was instantly engulfed in flames. The scarecrow was burnt to a crisp and crumbled into a pile of ashes. Xanthos' classmates cheered for him, and the boy stayed on the ground until he caught his breath. "Well done, Xanthos," Madame Weatherbury said. "Tangerina, you're up next."
Ooh, tell us, Jack, why? What's your guess? That's what we're here for. Tell us, we love it. We all know it's all just a guess on all our parts, but tell us. I had guesses about Pip. I thought Pip was Mother Goose. I was wrong. It's Lucy. Obviously, her last name is Goose. What do you think Pip is, you guys? Where do you think Pip is? I miss Pip. I'm worried about her. For the rest of the morning, Madame Weatherbury's students took turns magically defending themselves from the enchanted scarecrows. Tangerina splashed her scarecrow's feet with honey and it began to stuck to the ground. Emeralda trapped her scarecrow inside an emerald cage before it climbed down from its wooden post. Skyline pointed her finger at the scarecrow and a powerful geyser erupted from her fingertip and ripped it to shreds. Bristol waved her wand and a flock of white doves raised her scarecrow into the air and dropped it into the sparkling ocean behind the castle. I think Weatherbury is not who she seemed. Oh. You think she's actually a witch, not a fairy? Lucy clapped her hands and the scarecrow was crushed by a massive piano that fell from the sky. That's funny. Oh my God, I think same. No, what happens? Oh! You think that Madame Weatherbury herself is the Snow Queen and that's why she's not dead? Like she's another part of her? Oh, ooh, sneaky. I never thought of that. Ooh. Then to what end is she teaching them all this? Ooh. Finally, something I'm good at, Lucy said. Madame Weatherbury's self-defense lesson was by far the most enjoyable lesson the students and apprentices had participated in. Like she keeps coming back more covered, so maybe she changed from using bad magic. Wow, maybe. Yeah. They laughed and applauded at one another as they defeated the scarecrows one by one. Bristol was envious of the fun her classmates were having with the assignment. Unbeknownst to the others, Madame Weatherbury's lesson was designed specifically for her, and the exercises were preparing Bristol for a potential confrontation with the Snow Queen. It was hard for her to enjoy herself when the fate of the world depended on how well she perfected her skills.
Terrific work.
I hope I'm so wrong that it's embarrassing. I love that you want to be so wrong. That's actually really funny. You're like, I hope I'm embarrassingly wrong. Like I said, I was wrong about Pip, so, you know.
Terrific work, everyone, Madame Weatherbury said and clapped with the little energy that she could muster. You've done a wonderful job defending yourself from the one attacker, but let's see how you manage when you're outnumbered by— Madame Weatherbury!
Skyline suddenly shouted, the witches are back! Everyone jerked in the direction Skyline pointed to, and sure enough, they saw 4 cloaked figures standing at the edge of the property. Just as on their previous visit, the witches instantly made the children uneasy, but no one was more fearful than Bristol. She knew there was only one reason why the witches would travel all the way to the academy. As soon as their presence was known, Crowbeth, Nutelina, Phaelina, and Squidella crept toward the fairy and her students. Madame Weatherbury was so fatigued that it was hard to gauge her reaction to the unexpected guests. The fairy slowly got to her feet and stared at the approaching witches with a stoic gaze. Before they exchanged a single word in front of the children, Madame Weatherbury headed for the castle, and the witches followed her. Well, I suppose this means that the rest of our lesson is postponed, Bristol told the others. I think I'll take a quick nap before lunch. If that was the case, my guess is the students would be the ones who work to defeat her somehow. Yeah, but we know they don't, you know? Bristol hurried into the castle and ran up the floating staircase to her bedroom. By the time that she looked through the hole in her bookshelf and peered into Madame Weatherbury's office, her teacher was already seated behind her glass desk. The witches hovered over the fairy like looming predators. Madame Weatherbury rested her head on her hand and didn't even look up at her visitors.
Well,
Get on with it, the fairy said in a faint voice. What news have you brought this time?
Well, King Nobleton is dead,
Crowbeth screeched. Madame Weatherberry sat up straight in her chair. What? She gasped. He didn't evacuate Tinsel Heights before she attacked? No, Squidella grumbled. General White warned him that she was approaching and told him to leave the capital, but the king was stubborn and he ignored the advice. He and the royal family were in the middle of dinner at the palace when she struck. No one survived. That foolish, foolish man, Madame Weatherberry said, angrily shook her head. I always knew his pride would be the end of him. Only one city remains in the Northern Kingdom, Phelina growled. The entire population has fled to Appleton Village, and only a few miles away from Tinsel Heights. General White says that we're just days away from surrendering, and when he does, the entire kingdom will face execution. What about the other sovereigns? Madame Weatherberry asked. Why haven't King Champion or Queen Industria or King Wardworth sent reinforcements? Don't they realize their kingdoms are in just as much danger as the North?
The sovereigns are in denial, Crowbeth screeched. Nobleton assured them he had the situation under control, so that's what the monarchs are choosing to believe. General White has sent word of the Nobleton's death, but they've still denied his request for help.
The sovereigns believe the conflict can be contained by closing the borders, Phelina growled. They've shut down the protected paths, and now the northern refugees are trapped. The truth is, Champion, Industria, and Wardworth will not recognize the threat until the destruction crosses into their own kingdoms. Those selfish idiots, Madame Weatherberry yelled and hit her desk with a clenched fist. I met with the monarchs and I warned them each of this danger. All of this could have been avoided if they had granted General White's first request for help.
Ooh, General White. Do you think he might be Snow White's, grandfather or great-grandfather or something? Interesting.
Madame Weatherberry closed her weary eyes and massaged her graying temples while she contemplated what to do next. I thought I would have more time to rest, she said weakly. I wanted to be stronger before I faced her again. I didn't think it would be so soon. Celeste, we must strike, Nutalia hissed. This could be our last chance to secure the respect we deserve. To Bristol's surprise, Madame Weatherberry looked toward the ceiling at the exact spot where she was watching from. She knew the next thing out of Madame Weatherberry's mouth was meant for her ears. You're wrong, Nutalia, the fairy said. If we don't succeed, someone else will secure acceptance for our community in the future. I have absolute confidence in them. The message was so intimate and directed at Bristol that she had to remind herself she wasn't actually in the room with Madame Weatherberry. The witches weren't sure who the fairy was talking to and looked around the office in confusion. Madame Weatherberry stood with difficulty and collected her suitcase. It must be done, it must be done, she told the witches. We can leave as soon as I say goodbye to my students. Madame Weatherberry hobbled out of her office and the witches followed. Bristol couldn't believe the fairy's courage. She could barely stand, and yet she was willing to stand up to the Snow Queen in spite of her failing condition. Bristol's stomach was in knots as she worried about losing her teacher and fulfilling the promise that she had made to her. By the time she and the others regrouped, everyone was standing outside the castle, and Madame Weatherberry had already broken the news of the departure. You're leaving again? Tangerina said. Already? Unfortunately so, Madame Weatherberry said. My friend has become very ill, and I don't have much time left. I need to say goodbye while I still have the chance.
When will you be back? Skylene asked.
I don't know, Madame Weatherberry said. I may be gone for a long time, so I want you to continue your training while I am away. Bristol will be in charge until I return, so please do listen to her and show her the respect that you would normally give me. Madame Weatherberry became teary-eyed as she said farewell. I'm going to miss you all very much, very, very much, the fairy said. Being your teacher has been the greatest privilege of my life, and watching you all blossom into fairies has been my greatest joy. Be good to one another, children.
They were puzzled by their teacher's touching remarks. Madame Weatherbury hugged each of her students, her apprentices, and Mrs. V goodbye. When it was Bristol's turn, Bristol pulled her teacher into a tight embrace so that she could whisper into Madame Weatherbury's ear without the others hearing it. Please don't go, Bristol whispered. We aren't ready to lose you. I wish I could stay, Madame Weatherbury whispered back, but the universe has other plans for me. Then take me with you, Bristol pleaded. Let's face the Snow Queen together. You don't have to do this on your own. The others need you more than I do, the fairy said. Take care of them, Bristol, and please remember what you promised me. Madame Weatherbury tossed her brooch onto the ground, and the golden carriage grew to its full size. 4 unicorns emerged from a field nearby, and the carriage's reins magically fastened around them. The witches helped Madame Weatherbury into the carriage and took their seats beside her. And as they traveled through the property, Madame Weatherbury looked out the window at the grounds, the castle, the students of her beloved academy, and with one final bittersweet smile, the fairy said 1,000 goodbyes. That was odd, Emeralda said. She's coming back, right? Mrs. V and the children turned to Bristol for an answer. Even after Madame Weatherbury's carriage disappeared into the hedge barrier, Bristol continued staring into the distance so the others didn't detect the dishonesty in her eyes. Of course she's coming back, Bristol said. Madame Weatherbury would never abandon us. Never. 2 whole weeks passed without any word whatsoever from Madame Weatherbury. Bristol didn't think it was humanly possible to worry more than she already was, but her concerns multiplied the longer she waited. She practically lived on the castle's front steps while the fairy was gone, and she spent the majority of each day eyeing the edge of the property. Hoping her teacher's golden carriage would reappear in the distance, every few hours Bristol snuck into Madame Weatherbury's office to check the fairy's whereabouts on the map of magic. Thankfully, her teacher and the witch's stars were still shining in the Northern Kingdom, so Bristol knew at least Madame Weatherbury was still alive. By the end of Madame Weatherbury's 2nd week away from the academy, Bristol was so distraught that she couldn't hide her anguish anymore. She kept to herself and avoided her classmates whenever possible. She barely spoke, but when she did, it was only to bark out orders or a passive-aggressive comment where she supervised self-defense lessons. The students became good at the exercises. They could each battle a dozen scarecrows on their own. Bristol still had to force them to practice harder and longer each day. Tangerina, that honey needs to be deeper. Xanthos, those flames need to be higher. Skylene, that water won't be enough to stop a man in an armor. Emeralda, that cage needs to be stronger. And Lucy, self-defense is about more than just dropping heavy instruments on your enemies. Think of something else. Everyone do it again. Her classmates were getting tired of Bristol's attitude, but no one was more irritated than Lucy. Bristol's constant condescending and criticizing and commanding flustered Lucy to no end, and she eventually lost her patience. That's it, she shouted. We're not practicing anymore. Before Bristol could enchant a new batch of scarecrows for the lesson, Lucy snatched Bristol's wand out of her hand and held it above her head. No, Lucy, give me back my wand, Bristol ordered. No, Lucy said. I'm sick of you squawking at us. Stop being so immature, Bristol said. Madame Weatherbury told you to respect me. I'll respect you when the real you shows up, Lucy said. What's gotten into you, Bristol? You've been acting mean and moody ever since Madame Weatherbury left. I know something's wrong and I'm not giving back your wand unless you tell us what's going on. Nothing's going on, Bristol lied. Madame Weatherbury left me in charge, and I am trying to train you. And what are you training us for? Lucy asked. You've been drilling us like we're going to war. Well, maybe we are, Bristol yelled. As soon as the words escaped her mouth, Bristol knew there was no going back. Her outburst proved Lucy's suspicions correct, and the rest of her classmates became just as concerned. Bristol desperately wanted to explain herself, but Madame Weatherbury had specifically asked her not to share the truth with her classmates. Bristol didn't know what to do, and she was suddenly overwhelmed. She sat on the castle's front steps, and tears spilled down her face. Bristol, what's the matter? Emerald asked. Why are you crying? I wish I could tell you. I do, Bristol said. Of course you can tell us, Tangerina said. We might be able to help you, Skylene said. No, it's between me and Madame Weatherbury, Bristol said. I don't want you to worry about it.
Well, it's a little too late for that, Lucy said. Come on, whatever's troubling you can't be as bad as you think it is. I mean, it's not like it's the end of the world. Lucy's comment only made Bristol cry harder. Xanthos sat on the steps beside her and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Hey, please tell us what's wrong, he said sweetly. Secrets are like parasites, remember? Her friend's curiosity made the situation even more suffocating, and Bristol buckled under the pressure. She knew admitting the truth wouldn't solve anything, but if it released just an ounce of the agony inside her, it would be worth breaking her teacher's trust. Madam Weatherbury hasn't been leaving the academy to visit a sick friend, at least not in the way that you think, she said. She's been traveling to the Northern Kingdom to fight the Snow Queen. What? Lucy blurted out. I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth, Bristol said. How do you know this? Emeralda asked. Madam Weatherbury herself told me, Bristol said. That's the Northern conflict that she's been discussing with the sovereigns and the witches in secret. The Snow Queen has become so powerful that Madam Weatherbury is the only person who can stop her. So far, she's prevented the Snow Queen's destruction from spreading beyond the Northern Kingdom, but each encounter leaves Madam Weatherbury more weak than before, and I begged her to let me go with her, but she was adamant about going alone. Are you saying Madam Weatherbury's in danger? Tangerina asked. Yeah, as much danger as someone can be in, Bristol said. Madam Weatherbury said she's optimistic, but she already made plans in case she doesn't survive. If she perishes while defeating the Snow Queen, Madam Weatherbury wants me to take over the academy, and if she perishes before defeating the Snow Queen, she said I'm the one who has to kill her. At first, it was difficult for her classmates to believe everything that Bristol said, but the more they thought about it, the more it did explain Madam Weatherbury's mysterious behavior. Bristol didn't blame her friends for being skeptical. She had known the truth for weeks, and it was still hard for her to believe. Well, the chicken thickens, Lucy said, and placed her hands on her hips. Bristol, why didn't you tell us this sooner? Skylene asked. Bristol sighed. Madam Weatherbury didn't want you to know, she said. That's why I've been acting like such a lunatic. I've been tortured, keeping this all to myself. I'm not ready to lose Madam Weatherbury, and I'm certainly not ready to kill the Snow Queen. I've never felt so helpless in my entire life, and I've only made it worse by now burdening you guys with my problems. Your problems? Emeralda said. Bristol, I appreciate your loyalty, but you're crazy if you think that this is only your problem. If Madam Weatherbury's in danger, then it concerns all of us. You shouldn't have to go through this all by yourself. Emeralda's right, Lucy said, and I don't care what she asks of you. If Madam Weatherbury doesn't survive, then we will never let you face the Snow Queen on your own. Yeah, Xanthos said. We made a pact to help and protect one another. You'll always have us as backup. Bristol was touched by her friend's support. Their willingness to help lifted some of the weight that Madam Weatherbury had placed on her shoulders. Thank you, she said. I wish there was something I could do besides wait. I've been hoping and praying that Madam Weatherbury defeats the Snow Queen and lives to tell the tale, but that doesn't... Suddenly, Bristol went quiet. She was distracted by something strange in the distance. The academy grounds were cloaked in a dark shadow that gradually consumed the entire property. The students and apprentices looked up and saw that the darkness was being caused by a thick layer of gray clouds that had rolled in from the north and covered the sun. Bristol figured it was just another rainstorm until she noticed something white and fluffy descending from the sky. She reached out her hand and watched in amazement as a single snowflake landed on her palm. Is that snow? Skylene asked. No, it can't be, Tangerina said. It never snowed here before. It's not even cold out, Emeralda said. A quiet hush fell over the classmates and they exchanged fearful expressions. The students and apprentices knew they were all thinking the exact same thing. There was only one explanation. It's the Snow Queen, Lucy declared. Her powers must be growing if her storm is reaching us. And Madam Weatherbury must be in big trouble, Xanthos exclaimed. The others began to panic, but as Bristol watched the snowflake melt in her hand, she had a significant change of heart. She wasn't going to waste any more time living in fear. She wasn't going to spend another ounce of energy worrying. She was done with waiting and hoping for Madam Weatherbury's safe return. And after weeks of feeling helpless, Bristol knew exactly what she needed to do. I don't know about you guys, but I refuse to sit back and let a frosty old witch take Madam Weatherbury away from us, she said. What should we do? Xanthos asked. Bristol turned to her classmates and beamed with determination. Everyone get your coats, she said. We're going to save her. I got chills when the snow came. I felt the Snow Queen in my home. She's here. You could feel that. I felt it.
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm just counting. Give me a second. Okay, perfect. So we have exactly the right amount of chapters to finish on Tuesday next week. Oh, I wish, Naisa, that would be amazing. I wish I had the time for that. So we have exactly the right amount of chapters to finish this book on Tuesday next week, and I will make sure that we have the other one so that the following Monday we can start the new one, which is great. The next one, I believe, is called A Tale of Witchcraft. Yeah, Tale of Witchcraft. And then there's 3 so far in this series, I think. Are we going directly to the next book? Yeah, everyone really wanted to go directly into the next book, Jen. So we're gonna finish the series. Yeah. No, I think we should just do the whole series and just like let ourselves enjoy it, and then we'll read something else after that. But that'll get us through probably July if we do all 3, right? I would assume, which is great, right? And then maybe for our sleepover in like late July, early August, we can pick something else because we'll probably finish 1 book in a day for the sleepover whenever we manage to figure out when we can do that. But we'll pick like something else fun to read. I don't know what, but like we'll want to make sure that it's something by an author that we already know we love, so that we don't have to like worry if it's going to be good or not. Like you guys, Emily Henry's stuff has been so good. Maybe we'll read something by her. She's great. I'm not sure, Brittany. We haven't figured that out yet, but we will figure it out. We'll figure it out together. I think Zoom would be hard because I think there's a time limit, so I don't know about that. But we'll figure it out. And we'll probably do that on YouTube so we don't get any distractions or whatever. Yeah, Zoom has a time limit. At least when you have a free account it does, which I do. That's true. And so we can start debating what book we'd like to do for that. It needs to be something that we know is going to be good. Or maybe if we get to it, maybe the 3rd book in this series will be that. Maybe we'll read the whole 3rd book in the series in one go. Although it is kind of fun going day by day. We do enjoy that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out. All I know is we have to make sure that it's either we're reading something that we know is going to be good. Yeah, we can read from the Kindle for sure. We know it's something that's going to be good, or have a bunch of books ready to go in case we read the first couple of chapters or something and we like, oh my gosh, that would be so much fun, Jen. We should definitely do that. We should definitely all have like some snacks. We can all trade recipes and stuff. Okay. Oh no, Becca, him too? I know soy is not good. All right, so we'll figure that all out. But I will see you all later. I do not know what time we'll be on for slime later. I'm going to Target to try to get some glue because I've already used up all the clear glue that came in the mail. Hurrah. But 2 did break in the mail, so I'm waiting for the replacements for those. 102-degree fever, good Lord, poor baby. But I will be back on later. I'm taking, if you ordered any evergreens or are expecting a slime of the month, you're totally welcome, Brittany. They're going, a lot of them are going to the post office today. I have 4 bins full of stuff to take to the post office today. So a lot of orders are going out today, including obviously all the roll for slimes from last night. So that's the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah, glue hunt for real. All right. I will see you all later.